Okay, you guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about selection tools. So, if I ever needed to make a selection, like something specific, maybe just my hat, maybe just my face, maybe just this camera, there are a couple ways to do it. In the past, before some of these new AI tools existed, you'd have to go in manually and draw the selection yourself and then adjust it and really fine tune it. And you would go down here on the left side over here, let's long press, and you would use tools like this one, the quick selection tool or the magic wand tool. Those are kind of, a thing of the past at this point. They have this new one called object selection tool that essentially uses its AI to just choose the different parts of the photo, and it does a really good job. Okay. And, even Lightroom at this point is got its version of this as well. So programs are everyone's doing this now. It's super duper handy. Like the days of having to manually select this stuff and go, fine tune edges and stuff, that's a thing of the past. That is like prehistoric at this point. So this selection tool is pretty incredible. You can see as I'm scrolling around here what's happening. Okay. Now, a reason that you would want to do something like this, maybe you want to change the color of a specific item. Maybe I want to change the color of my hoodie, or maybe I want to, change the color of my hat, or maybe I want my glasses to, maybe I want to select it because I want to change everything else around it, but not touch this, and then we could make a mask and protect just this area. Like there's tons of reasons why you're going to want to make selections because you're going to work on specific things. Okay. So for an example, just so you guys can see, the way that this is going to work is you have to be on your main image. This doesn't really work when you're on a blank layer like that. So I'm not going to do the blank layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this background layer. And if I grab it and I go down and I bring it to this new layer area, it then doubles the image. Okay, you can see it says background copy. So I doubled the full image because it's not going to really quite understand these layers when you're on a blank layer like before. You have to be on the full blown image. Okay. I'll delete it and I'll do it one more time. So you grab the background area because this is important to know. You grab it and you bring it down to that new layer box. I'm dragging it down there and then I let go and it gives me a new background copy essentially. Okay. So then when I'm on that object selection tool, now when I move around, now it can understand the different parts of the image. Okay. So sometimes people do it on a blank layer or they don't, and they don't understand why it's not working. The other thing is you would never do it on the first image, like I've talked about in other videos, because then you're stuck with it. You always do it on its own layer so that you have the option to turn it on and off to see your before and after, but then you also have the option to delete it if you don't like what you did. Okay, and then you still have your main image left and you can start from scratch. Okay, so as an example here, let's just say I want to select my shirt. Okay. So I've clicked it and now it made a selection. Now let's also say I'd like to select my hat. I'm gonna go and do that. Now you do have to hit shift, okay? If I just select my hat, it changes where the selection is, okay? So I'm gonna undo that. The selection is here, but if I want just my hat, for example, I have to hit shift so it adds it, okay? So now when I move away, now my shirt is selected. Now my hat is also selected. So we have my sweater and my hat selected. Now, why this is important is because if I wanted to change, let's say, the color of those two things, now it's only gonna happen to what I've selected. So I could go down here to my adjustment layers, and I could click on color balance, okay, as an example. And as soon as I did that, you can see it made a mask automatically of the area that I had selected. Why that's cool is because now if I change the slider, look what's happening. It's only changing color to my selected area. Okay, so now I don't have to go and paint this stuff because when you're painting, you're missing edges, or maybe you're going over the edges and it's a little trickier. And look, you can move super fast. It's super duper precise too. Okay, so you can see how effective this is. I quite like it, actually. I'm going to keep some of this around when I go into the blue like this. Now, if I toggle this off, Here's where it started. And here's where we're at so far. Now, if I think something like that is too much, like we took it too far, like I've showed you in other videos, go to the opacity here and just bring the effect down a bit. Okay, so it's not so heavy, but I liked seeing some of that blue tint. That was not bad. It kind of matched more with those neons coming from the right. So here's before, here's after. And the reason that worked so well is because we made the selection and it kept that adjustment to only that selection area. Now, something to note is if you wanted to invert that, you could invert. We've talked about invert before. You go Apple I or Command I, and it inverts the selection, meaning now the effect happened to everything except that area. Okay, so you could see it changed it to all the outsides. So it left the shirt the same and it left the hat the same, but anything that wasn't in the selection, so that means my skin and my pants too, now has that effect. I don't love that. I liked it better when my idea was to affect just the shirt and the hat. So I'm going to put it back by going Apple I and make the inversion there. Okay. So if you wanted to do one more, just as an example so you understand, let's pick one more thing. Maybe we want to do, maybe something should be black and white just for something interesting. Maybe we want my skin to be black and white. So what we have to do is we have to start on a fresh layer. Remember, I do need to do it on these real layers, not blank layers. So this one's a tricky one. I'm going to tell you a shortcut to do this, but we have to kind of stamp this down to a new fresh layer, and you go Command, Option, Shift, E. Now, I don't expect you to memorize that. That's a tough one. That took me a while to memorize, but Command, Option, Shift, E, all held down together, stamps all of your effects down and puts everything on a new fresh base layer, okay? I'll include that in the notes that goes along with this chapter so you can see it, because that is a tricky one. But when I use Photoshop, I do that tons. I always have to use that shortcut, Command, Option, Shift, E. You might have to say it 100 times or do it 100 times to memorize it. But if you need to get a fresh layer like this after you've done a whole bunch of other things, you need to stamp it down to a new layer, and it's Command, Option, Shift, E. Okay. Now we have our fresh layer. Let's do one more selection. So make sure your selection thing is enabled. Let's pick let's do the camera. Let's do something to the camera. Okay, so we've got the camera selected. Now we can go here and maybe we just want to add some neons or some light or some color to the camera. So let's go back to color balance like that. Okay, so now as you can see, the mask is now just on the camera like we did, but now we could add some color like that. And because my idea is that, I had some neon lights in the background. It was hitting the wall, but it wasn't really falling on me. And I would have liked to get some of that color spilling on me just to kind of complete the image. So in this case, we're adding some color just to the camera, okay? Okay, so if we're happy with that color, what we could do is maybe just to finish this video up, let's add one more effect. I'd like to make that camera just a little bit brighter, okay? So I'm going to stamp down again. This will let you see that again. So I'm going to go Command, Option, Shift, E. It gives me a new fresh layer here, but of the full image. And now I'm going to, with my selection tool, get that camera selected again. And then I'm going to go to the adjustment layers, and I'm going to go to a curves layer. Okay, the curves here, this will let me choose some spots to bring up some brightness, or maybe I want to, crush the blacks. In this case, I just wanted that camera to be a little bit brighter. Okay, so I'm going to grab somewhere in the middle of the line and just bring it up. But what you're going to notice is, like before, it's only affecting the camera. That's fantastic, because if I wanted to make that camera brighter by brushing it in, I would have had a really tough time, avoiding the fingers and avoiding the edges and whatnot. So this is such a perfect way to do it, and it's so simple, so quick, but also perfect around those edges and whatnot. So if you go like that, let's toggle it off. You can see the darker camera, and there it is with way more pop, and some of that neon color hit it as well. Okay, so this is your selection tool. It's super duper important and handy, and not that hard. But some of the things, the tips that I told you, like stamping down the layers, the Command Shift option or Command Option Shift E. Some of those could be tricky, so you may need to revisit this a few times. But anyhow, I hope this helps, and I hope you could take this and use it to your advantage.